54% of high-earning professionals who experience a separation in their early 30s will quietly slip into clinical depression within 6 months, hiding a total psychological collapse behind a 7-figure smile. Listen to the acoustics of a luxury high-rise apartment when the rugs have been rolled up and half the furniture is gone. The cardboard boxes are stacked in the hallway with terrifying, methodical precision. In one box, a collection of bespoke tailored suits and silk ties. In the next, a disassembled organic oak crib, a white noise machine, and a stack of unread bedtime stories. This is what the death of a blueprint sounds like. You did everything exactly the way you were supposed to. You worked the 80-hour weeks. You out-strategized your peers, secured the corner office, and bought into the zip code that guaranteed the safest environment and the best preschool. You architected a family life that was mathematically bulletproof. Until it wasn't. Now, you are standing in the silent wreckage of a future you assumed was entirely safe. For a highly invested new parent, a breakup of this magnitude is never just a heartbreak. It is a catastrophic, systemic failure. You are mourning the family vacations that will never be booked. You are grieving the two-parent household you sacrificed your youth to guarantee for your child. You are looking at a beautiful, innocent baby and feeling the crushing weight of a promise you can no longer keep. The medical journals label this post-divorce clinical depression. The corporate world calls it an unfortunate personal distraction. But you know what it really is. It is the absolute destruction of your meticulously curated life resume. And the most terrifying part? You have absolutely no time to bleed. The demands of your reality do not pause for your grief. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, you have to stand at the head of a mahogany table and run a quarterly strategy meeting without your voice shaking. You have to project absolute dominance, maintaining a facade of invincibility to investors who smell weakness like blood in the water. But tonight, right now, you have to warm a bottle. You have to rock a crying infant back to sleep and sing a lullaby with a soft, steady smile that convinces your child the world is perfectly fine. You are trapped in the ultimate cognitive dissonance. You are simultaneously the most powerful person in the boardroom and the most shattered person in your own kitchen. Every single survival mechanism that made you an elite professional, the ability to outwork, outthink, and outmaneuver your problems, is utterly useless against the crushing emotional gravity of a broken home. You are trying to process the death of your family's future while maintaining absolute dominance at the office and absolute, unshakable presence for your baby. The isolation is deafening. You cannot tell your colleagues because it compromises your authority. You cannot tell your child because it compromises their security. So, you carry it alone. You pack the boxes in silence. You swallow the panic attacks between the morning commute and daycare drop-off. How do you survive when the boardroom demands invincibility, the crib demands everything else, and the person you built this empire with is the one tearing it down? The answer lies in a dangerous psychological trap that almost every single high achiever falls into. Consider the chief operating officer who treats her separation exactly like a hostile takeover. She drafts color-coded custody schedules with the same ruthless precision she applies to global supply chain logistics. Or consider the director of mergers and acquisitions, who approaches the division of his household like a complex corporate divestiture. When you have spent a decade successfully climbing the corporate ladder, you are conditioned to believe that any crisis can be managed with a spreadsheet, a contingency plan, and relentless execution. So, they apply the only framework they know to the collapse of their marriage. They attempt to manage the trauma. The cognitive dissonance of this double life is staggering. At 8 in the morning, they are at the daycare drop-off, adjusting a tiny backpack, beaming with the exaggerated enthusiasm required to convince a toddler that their universe is entirely stable. At 9 in the morning, they are staring down a team of opposing counsel in a glass-walled conference room, negotiating contracts with absolute ice in their veins. They become masters of scheduled devastation. A high-achieving professional does not have the luxury of falling apart during business hours. Instead, the grief is heavily, meticulously compartmentalized. The mourning happens in the underground parking garage at 7 in the evening. They grip the steering wheel of a German luxury sedan until their knuckles turn white, allowing themselves exactly 14 minutes of uncontrollable sobbing before they have to wipe their face, walk into their new, half-empty apartment, and make a bowl of macaroni and cheese. It happens in the first-class lounge of an airport, drafting a multi-million-dollar proposal on a laptop while silently weeping behind a pair of designer sunglasses. They are shaking hands on massive acquisitions with a firm, practiced grip, all while a hollow, echoing void consumes their chest. They return to a silent hotel room, pull a toddler's forgotten stuffed animal from their briefcase, and the invincibility finally shatters. But only for the night. By sunrise, the armor goes back on. They are trying to buy their way out of the emotional deficit. If they can just close this next round of funding, if they can just secure that promotion, they can afford the best nannies, the best therapists, the most elaborate weekend distractions. They believe that if they maintain absolute operational perfection, their child will never notice that the foundation of their world has cracked in half. They view their pain as a logistical error that can be corrected through sheer force of will. But the human psyche is not a balance sheet. You cannot offset an emotional liability with a financial asset. You cannot optimize a broken heart. The pressure of maintaining this flawless facade is immense. Every single day requires burning through emotional reserves they simply do not have. They are functioning on cold brew, cortisol, and the terrified adrenaline of a parent trying to single-handedly hold up the sky so it doesn't crush their child. But treating your family trauma like a bad quarterly earnings report has a terrifying expiration date. You can only compartmentalize the collapse of your identity for so long before the walls between your professional dominance and your personal ruin begin to buckle. And for one of them, the dam is about to break at the worst possible moment, revealing the fatal flaw in treating your life like a resume. You have spent your entire life operating under a very specific contract with the universe: input relentless effort, output guaranteed success. You studied late, you got the elite degree. You networked ruthlessly, you secured the promotion. You read all the data-driven parenting books, you bought the sprawling suburban house in the perfect school district, and you scheduled the immaculate holiday photos. You built your life as a series of compounding achievements, curating a perfect, unbroken resume. And then, the most critical project of your entire life fails. For the high-achieving new parent, a separation is not just the loss of a romantic partner. It is a terrifying, unprecedented crisis of identity. You have never failed at anything this monumental before. The deep, burning shame is not just that your relationship ended, the shame is that you, the master strategist, the fixer, the architect of this perfect life, could not solve the problem. This is the specific, agonizing grief of the shattered blueprint. You are not just crying over the person packing their bags. You are mourning a ghost. You are grieving the phantom family vacations you had already scheduled in your head. You are mourning the chaotic, joyful Sunday mornings with two parents making pancakes that your child will now never experience. You look at the empty seat at the kitchen island, and your strategic mind instantly projects it 20 years into the future, calculating the awkward logistics of a high school graduation, or the painful division of holidays for the rest of your life. You look at your beautiful, innocent child, and instead of just seeing them in the present moment, you see a broken promise. You feel an overwhelming, suffocating guilt that despite your impressive salary, your executive title, and your endless resources, you failed to provide them with the one thing you promised they would always have, a seamlessly intact home. So, the psychological dam finally breaks. It doesn't happen in the privacy of your therapist's office. It happens right in the middle of a mundane Tuesday. Maybe it hits during a crucial Q3 review, when a minor logistical error triggers a sudden, breath-stealing panic attack. Maybe it happens when a well-meaning board member casually asks how the family is doing, and the physical effort it takes to force a smile and say, "We're great," makes the room spin. The realization hits you with the force of a physical blow: your entire sense of worth was tied up in being the flawless professional leading the flawless family. Without that picture, without those specific bullet points on your life's resume, you are entirely hollow. When the resume of your life catches fire, the immediate instinct of an overachiever is to grab the fire extinguisher of hyperproductivity. You overcompensate. You buy too many toys to ease the guilt. You plan aggressively elaborate weekend excursions to manufacture joy. You volunteer to lead impossible, high-stakes projects at work just to prove to the partners, and to yourself, that you aren't slipping. Staring into the void of this broken blueprint, they thought the only way out was to work harder, parent harder, and control the damage. But they were missing the one radical psychological shift required to actually survive this, a shift that goes against everything they were ever taught about success. To survive the collapse of the blueprint, you have to do something that violates every single instinct of your high-achieving mind. You must radically decouple your human worth from your romantic and professional milestones. For 30 years, you were conditioned to believe a very specific lie. You were taught that your value as a person was directly proportional to the goals you achieved and the optics you maintained. A perfect GPA. A 7-figure portfolio. A flawless marriage. A smiling child in a pristine, two-parent home. Without even realizing it, you began treating your family as the ultimate acquisition, the final, crowning metric of your success as a human being. But a family is not a corporate milestone. And a failed marriage does not mean a failed family. This is the brutal, beautiful paradigm shift. You have to stand in the quiet ruins of your apartment, look in the mirror, and accept that your child does not need a flawless architect. They do not need a CEO of the household who executes the perfect weekend itinerary while slowly dying inside. They need a human being. They need a parent who is grounded, present, and emotionally breathing. To become that parent, you must painstakingly untangle your self-esteem from the perfect picture you lost. You must stop viewing your separation as a catastrophic downgrade on your life's resume, and stop treating your child's childhood like a curated museum exhibit that has been tragically vandalized. The pristine, two-parent household you obsessed over was just one version of the blueprint. It is gone. You must mourn it, let it burn, and sweep away the ashes. Because now, you have to build something real. You begin to realize that the raw, agonizing resilience you are forced to develop right now is the exact resilience you want your child to inherit. You do not teach a toddler how to survive adversity by pretending the storm isn't happening. You teach them by holding their hand while you walk through the rain together. Your newfound vulnerability is not a leadership liability. It is the most powerful parenting asset you will ever possess. Decoupling your worth means understanding that your value as a mother, or your value as a father, is not diminished by the presence of a custody schedule. Your worth is not defined by the empty space in your bed, or by the whispered, sympathetic gossip of other parents at the preschool drop-off. Your worth is forged in the quiet, profoundly unglamorous moments. It is forged at 2 a.m, when you are exhausted, heartbroken, and completely alone, yet you still manage to warm the bottle and sing that lullaby with a soft, steady smile. You are no longer managing a logistical crisis. You are surviving an initiation. You are burning away the superficial, societal metrics of success to uncover the absolute bedrock of who you actually are. It sounds like a beautiful theory. A profound, enlightening psychological awakening. But how do you actually execute this radical decoupling when you're staring at your ex across a cold, mahogany custody table, feeling the familiar bile of betrayal rise in your throat, knowing you still have a high-stakes board meeting at 9? The exact strategy is messy, but it is the only way forward. The execution is terrifyingly unglamorous. It starts in that exact moment at the custody table. You look across the polished mahogany at the person who broke your heart, and instead of treating them like a hostile competitor you need to out-leverage, you take a slow, agonizing breath. You drop the armor. You concede the petty battle over Tuesday afternoons because you finally realize that protecting your child's peace is infinitely more valuable than protecting your own pride. And then, you walk into your 9 o'clock board meeting. But something has fundamentally shifted. The desperate, suffocating need to project absolute invincibility is gone. You are still brilliant. You are still commanding. But you are no longer powered by the terrified adrenaline of a fraud waiting to be exposed. You lead from a place of grounded, quiet authority. You realize that surviving the collapse of your personal life didn't make you weaker, it made you dangerously resilient. The absolute worst thing you could imagine has already happened to you, and you are still standing. Slowly, the double life begins to merge into a single, authentic existence. You stop scheduling your breakdowns in the underground parking garage. You stop trying to buy your way out of the guilt with expensive toys and aggressively planned weekend excursions. Instead, you let the weekend be messy. You sit on the floor of your new, imperfectly furnished living room, eating takeout pizza with your toddler, and you actually laugh. It isn't the curated, aesthetically flawless joy you once envisioned for your family, but it is real. It is a deep, vibrating joy that you do not have to photograph or document to validate. The bespoke suits and silk ties are still in the closet, but they no longer act as your psychological shield. The nursery might have been reassembled in a different zip code, but the bedtime stories are now read with a level of presence you never possessed when you were checking your phone every 3 minutes for client emails. You forgive yourself for the separation. You forgive yourself for not being a magician who could hold a fractured universe together through sheer willpower. You are no longer checking boxes on a societal resume. You are consciously architecting a life that actually serves you and your child. You realize that the destruction of your meticulously planned, entirely safe future was the exact catalyst required to build an honest one. The old version of you, the executive who needed everything to look flawless from the outside, had to be completely dismantled so the actual parent could finally emerge. You are no longer providing a picture-perfect illusion. You are providing a resilient, unconditionally loving reality. The blueprint is gone, but for the first time, the foundation is real. It forces a question we all must eventually face: when you look at your own carefully crafted life resume, who are you, really, if all the bullet points disappear?